Hello and good evening. It's lovely to see so many of you here this evening, and we've got a number of revision activities to do with education coming up very shortly, but we'll also try and keep an eye on the chat window. If you've got any questions about education in particular, perhaps paper one in general, we'll keep an eye out for them. We are going to do some more before then though, so if we don't get through all your questions today, do keep an eye out for another session in the future. And hi Craig, how are you doing?
Hi Duncan, yeah, good. Looking forward to it. Just under 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, nearly there. Okay, shall we get cracking straight away with some activities, and then we'll keep an eye on what people are asking as well at the same time. So
yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, here we go. I'm just seeing there are quite a lot of comments coming in as we speak.
Just to explain to Pash 5, no, it's not business, it's sociology. There are a number of business ones over the next few weeks, but yeah, they're sociology. Okay, so in our first activity, we're going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What you're going to see on the screen is I'm going to ask you to identify 5 of something, 4 of something, 3 of something. Oh, we started. 2 of something and 1 of something. So we want you to identify and just put these in the chat box, put the number 5 and then different functions of education. Put number 4 and then explanations for class differences in education. 3, in-school factors impacting on achievement by ethnicity. 2, out-of-school factors for boys' underachievement. And number 1, marketization policy. Just put the number next to it. We might be able to identify them anyway. You have about 2 minutes and we'll start reading them out as we come through.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Okay, so we've seen some through secondary socialization, teacher meritocracy, specialist skills, role allocation, social solidarity, some really good ones there. Formula funding as a marketization policy, that's a good one. Good. Reproduce patriarchy, reproduce class inequality, teaching global skills, secondary socialization, socialization, I assume. Secondary socialization, specialist skills. Oh wow, they're coming through really fast. Institutional racism, assuming it's for number 3. Secondary socialization, role allocation, again, lots of people getting these 5 here. Of course, when we talk about functions of education, we can also talk about Marxist ideas, because Marxists say that there are functions of education. They don't necessarily think that they benefit society, though. Quite a lot coming through. There's material deprivation and cultural deprivation, labelling, setting and streaming from Johan, Millie, not being read to at home by parents, and
That might be the boys, do you think?
Solidarity. Yeah, I think that would be number 2, yeah. Correspondence principle in the ISA from Habs. Open enrollment as a policy from Sarah Iqbal. Labelling, material deprivation, they are coming through so fast. 1988 ERA in general for number 1. That's a good shout. Language codes, cultural capital, material deprivation, parental attitudes. That could be for number, I think it's for number 4.
Yeah, quite a few.
Reproduced class inequality, reinforced patriarchy. So many. There's some really good responses coming through here.
I was going to say some people have gone. Just saying a couple of people have gone. Sorry, Craig. I was just saying a couple of people have gone for kind of feminist functions of education. That's fine as well. You know, like so reinforcing patriarchy.
Yeah, I mean, there's that phrase, functions of education. When we talk about functions of education, it really is what is the purpose and role of education. National curriculum, speech codes, myth of parentocracy. There's so many good ideas coming through here.
Ofsted, league tables, quite a lot of ideas for the marketisation policy.
And culture, socialisation, Willis, excellent. Marketisation policies, Baker Act. Yeah, Education Reform Act was just done by Kenneth Baker, league tables, Ofsted, parental choice vouchers, excellent. Really, really good stuff here. Let's see our answers.
Yeah, you've come up with loads of others.
We have come up with some others as well. So if you see what we've put on, we've just put an example on here. So social solidarity, socialization into the value consensus, ideological state apparatus, role allocation, preparing pupils for work, which we can link to correspondence principle. You've come up with some really good ones as well there. Number 4, material deprivation, labelling, cultural differences and cultural capital we went with. Lots of other ideas were thrown in here as well. Number 3, institutional racism, ethnocentric curriculum, and teachers' racialized expectations. Lots of people come up with pupil identities, labelling, lots of other ones in there as well. Some really good stuff. And number 2, we went with gender socialization and decline of male industries. Some people talked about literacy rates in there as well, family structure.
Reading, socialization,
reading,
some really good ones. Mm-hmm.
Really good ones, And our final one, we just went with the Education Reform Act as a marketisation policy, but there were lots of others that you could have had. So things like academisation, introduction of free schools, creation of Ofsted. Some people have mentioned formula funding, open enrolment, things like
the ERA.
ERA sort of is quite a big, massive one. And
lots
there you go.
Policies within that.
Wow. Really good stuff.
Really good stuff.
We're going to move on. Yeah, we're going to move on from that now. We're going to look at a little bit kind of like probably what we would see as being the 4 and the 6 marker questions. We're going to look at sort of like, I want you to identify 3 ways material deprivation can impact on achievement. When it comes to the exam, it's not enough to just say material deprivation. You have to explain how material deprivation impacts on achievement and who it impacts on as well. Of course, we assume that that's the working class, but what you have to do in that question is make sure that you say that very explicitly, that it impacts on students who are on free school meals or working class students.
Good answers coming in already, but we got 30
well,
seconds.
Let's give you 30 seconds to come up with ways material deprivation can impact on achievement. This bit of guitar music to go along with you there. So diet and health, lack of nutrition, lack of resources, not appropriate working conditions at home, working part-time to help our parents. Wow, it's a good topic, this one, for people. Poor housing, lack of nutrients, can't afford resources from Neve. Seeing they're coming through fast. I've got 2 screens here where they're coming through. They're coming through quite a lot. Overcrowded housing, poor housing, fear of debt. Lack of money means they may not be able to get better food for them. Poor housing, damp can cause illness, more time outside of school. Excellent. Some really good responses coming through there. Lack of resources resulting in working class students being unable to join online lessons or do research. Excellent. Jonah, again, something like poor diet and health, lack of nutrition with working class students leads to illness and therefore absence, which is pretty much what I've put. And the first one I've put in, I've actually put poor housing can lead to illness and absence from school.
Yeah, but poor diet works as well. Mm-hmm.
Poor diet does work as well. I kind of put poor diet in with the bottom one,
Yeah.
lack of attention at
Yeah.
school, which then can potentially, and this is something you may want to focus on, also have an impact on in-school factors as well. So it might be that students may be labelled negatively because they have a lack of attention as well.
Yeah.
And I think that one is somebody, I think Nico's just put, can you link poor diet and health to focus in class? Yes.
Brilliant.
That's
Absolutely.
pretty much what we're saying there. And care and responsibilities may limit ability to do homework, looking after siblings. You can also put work, part-time work in there as well. That is a really that's a really good, some really good responses coming through there.
And I was just going to say, you know, one thing if you got like this as a 6 marker or something is making sure that you've got really 3 distinct ones.
Yeah.
And so you see there, you know, we've done poor housing leading to illness and absence from school, and we've developed poor diet in a different way. And there's a risk sometimes that you end up overlapping a bit too much, to try and make sure that you keep them nice and distinct. Yeah.
There is. And even if you were writing a paragraph, say you got a 30-mark essay on social class and education, if you're doing a paragraph on material deprivation, being able to explore different ways in which material deprivation may impact on students is a really, really good way of showing analysis.
Yeah. Lots of other good ones in the chat window about people might have to do jobs and that take up time outside of school, space to revise in, all that kind of thing. Really good one.
Just a question there from Garrick Bell. Are insurance answered accounted for in 4 and 6 markers? I'm assuming you mean if you put, say, for example, it asks you for 2 reasons, you put down 3, you would be awarded the best 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the best 3.
Yeah. So, so sometimes if you're not totally confident with one of them, you could have another go. You know, try for another one. Yeah, but you won't get marked for more than 2 or 3 of them. You know, so it's not like you could get the kind of identify mark for.
Yeah, you're not going to get 6 out of 4. No,
no, but you wouldn't get 4 out of 4 for identifying 4 things and not explaining them either. If you see what I mean, you can only be marked for the right number. Right. But yeah, okay. But you'll be marked for the best 2 or the best 3, not the first 2 or first 3. Yeah. Okay. All right. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's move on to the activity.
Yeah, so we're doing a little connection spinner activity now. So get you thinking a bit. So we're going to look at whether you can make a connection between processes within schools and some of these different aspects of education. So we've got external factors that impact education. There's an interesting one to link to processes within schools, because we tend to think of that as being internal factors. We've got achievement and social class, achievement and ethnicity, and achievement and gender. So how can these processes within schools link to that? We've got the formation of identities, and we've got social policies of various sorts, or educational policies. So we're going to spin the wheel. It'll come up with one of these areas, and just see let your mind flow a bit. What connections can you make between process within schools and that feature of education? Let's see what comes up first. Spin
It's
the
nice
wheel.
to see there's a kind of reunion of sorts happening on here in the chat.
People,
everybody seems to know each other. That's good.
It is nice. Achievement and gender. So how could we link processes within schools to achievement and gender? Okay, so we're not saying specifically boys' achievement or girls' achievement. You could make points about either of those, but just general points about achievement and gender. So let's see what we come up with. I think things sometimes come onto your screen quicker than mine, Craig. So if you see something...
They are. We've got GCSEs and coursework, labelling, teacher expectations, equal opportunities policy, setting and streaming. They're coming through really fast. Feminisation of education, teacher labelling again, teacher attention, more female teachers, the hidden curriculum and the male gaze. Female pupils more likely to be seen as an ideal pupil. League tables benefit girls. Setting and streaming. Teacher attention from teachers. Boys likely to be spoken to for behaviour. Male gaze again. Gist and wise, or wise and gist, loose put. Jackson, league tables have improved opportunities for girls. Better schools more likely to select girls than boys, leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy of success for girls. Really good one there. Has developed. Coursework, labelling, teacher expectations. I think it's double standards. stereotyping of gender subjects, channeling of gender subjects. Girls more likely to be pushed to choose coursework-based subjects. Boys succeed with STEM subjects. Bedroom culture. Bedroom culture would see as an external process, but it's still a good reason that impacts on achievement.
A few people saying are a couple of things that are coming up, not processes within schools. And yeah, it's true. We need to be a little bit cautious there. Some people coming up with policies. Obviously, policies on the screen as well, so it sort of might cause a little bit of confusion there. Processes within schools. We're tending to think things like labelling and the formation of subcultures and identities, but I guess it could link to some internal policies like setting and streaming and things like that. Yeah. Would you agree?
I would, yeah. I mean, particularly as well, you can talk about internal school policies as well, not just educational policies. So things like internal selection policies, such as setting and streaming. That's a form of that.
Absolutely. We've got Nike identities. We tend to link that more with social class, but there's definitely some Archer stuff.
Neves,
on gender
I think
as well.
Neves kind of added to that Archer hypersexualized feminine identities.
Yeah, very good. Well done. Okay, someone's asked what's bedroom culture. We might come back to that later because, as you say, it's not totally an answer to this question, but it's a good explanation for why girls might do better in education as an external factor, that perhaps girls spend more time in their bedrooms rather than out about on the streets, and therefore might be reading magazines or writing in a journal, and therefore practicing skills that are useful in education.
Nice one that's come through from Rosie. Boffin identities. That was Francis and Archer, I think, as well. Talking about sort of how girls have developed this kind of very intellectual identity in school. So it's a good one.
And it's nice. It's always nice when people answer the questions within the chat window. It's great to see you talking to each other. I think it's Hanim there's given a good answer about bedroom culture. So, I mean, I've come up with a couple on here, but you've come up with loads of really good ones there. Labelling, the idea of the halo effect, the idea of the ideal pupil. But you came up with loads of other really good ones, things to do with subcultures as well, subculture formation. I think we could have been included there. Okay, I've just noticed someone saying they've got no sound. I'm assuming most people can hear because they're answering the questions, but if someone could just do a little thumbs up to let me know that you can hear us still, that would be good. Or just type something and say, yes, we can hear you.
The halo effect, I've just had from Neve. What is the halo effect? We can hear you from another Neve. The halo effect, it's the idea that some students, because of sort of like the way that they speak, usually middle class students, the way they speak, the way they're dressed, they are given a kind of a false positive self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. They assume that they are better than they are, if you like. Kind of a positive label.
Yeah, like a positive label. And so you might get some girls, because of the idea that they might be less disruptive and more, and that idea of the ideal pupil definitely linked to that as well. Yeah, we've got. Shall we spin the wheel again? See where it lands this time. Okay.
Yeah.
Here it goes. All right. Identity formation. Okay, so that we might have had some points already that link a little bit to that, but can we think about how processes within schools help form people's identities? Rose comes straight with Nike identities, absolutely. Quite a few people talk about Mirza. That's a good link. Perhaps they were linking back to the last one, but talk about it here as well.
So cultural formation. It's good. Labelling, again, like identities coming through again, labelling.
Symbolic violence, very good.
Symbolic violence, nice term. Changes to subjects, I think I just saw go through there as well. People identities, Archer. Archer's done a lot of work on people identities.
Absolutely.
Lots of work about different ethnic identities as well as social class identities. Boffin identities, again. Male gaze, status frustration. Certainly you can link that into boys and sort of like how it might help might lead to subcultural formation. Work with Paul Willis and gendered images in textbooks. That's a good one as well.
Capital.
Sorry.
There was some
Feminine girls
capital.
wouldn't remember what that one was called. Symbolic violence, polarization. That's a good one. Habitus, cultural habitus. Moral panic about failing boys has led to a shift in policy towards raising boys' achievement. Carnal hegemonic masculinity. Okay, some of
Lots and lots
these you
of
can use for crime as
stuff.
well,
Yeah.
particularly common hegemonic masculinity.
Yeah. Self-fulfilling
Innovators
prophecy.
obviously leads to fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a lot coming through there. What
Lots
did
coming
we have,
through.
Duncan?
I went down the sort of Nike identities route as well, and used some of the same terminology there: symbolic capital and symbolic violence. I did notice someone in the chat ask, "What is symbolic violence?" So symbolic capital comes into the Nike identities, particularly where we're talking about those kind of. So someone else is asking, "What's Nike identity?" So it's a study by Louise Archer, looking at different sort of social class identities in school, and she found that working class pupils experience symbolic violence, which meant the kind of things that were of value to them, important things to them, were not valued by school and perhaps by the dominant groups in the school. So it was a sort of clash of habitus, to use the fancy cultural capital phrases, and therefore they gain symbolic capital through wearing kind of label, designer gear like Nike, whatever. And then the sort of conclusion of her study was that this sort of, I guess, kind of made people sort of less pro-education. So the idea that they would, the full title of the study is "University's Not for Me, I'm a Nike Person." It was the idea that they would associate education as not being for them.
Question there on habitus. Habitus is kind of the cultural framework of a group, so their norms, values, tastes, their attitudes. It's what makes up their part of their culture. So that was clashing with that of the school, and this was what led to symbolic violence.
Absolutely.
And of course, they obtained symbolic capital through wearing those clothes, which is a form of status, really, that they got with their peers.
Yeah, so it's similar. It's a related concept to some of the subcultural theories that you can think of. Kind of a bit like that sort of status frustration idea, but rather than kind of turning norms and values upside down, it's finding alternative forms of status or capital. Yeah. Okay. So no, someone else asking about it. So it's not really like bullying. The violence. It's not literal violence. It's like kind of not. It's kind of being disregarded or your
rejected.
Rejected. Yeah. Okay. And lots of other people coming up with brilliant responses there. The Asian feminine identity. Loads of stuff coming in the chat window there. So very well done. Back to Craig for a connection wall.
Yeah, I've picked everybody's favourite kind of topic for the connection wall, which is educational policy. There are 4 groups of, there are 16 policies on your screen, and they are sorted into 4 groups. What we want you to do is try to identify the different types of groups. Hey, we did this in the booster session. We did a very similar one in the booster session. It's not the same one. But yes, we did do it in the grade booster session, and we did a slightly different one in that. In this one, we want you to identify the 4 different groups and the policies that would go into those. Okay, I will give you a couple of hints on the first 2. They are linked to marketization, but different aspects of marketization. Okay.
So, what are the categories?
And then think about another category that you might be able to sort some policies into. So we've got EMA formula funding, new labour. Nope, sorry. That's not right. Tackling inequality, yes, is one of the categories. It's actually the 3rd category that comes up. So we'll come that up there. Prioritisation policy of equality of opportunity policies. Okay, some good ones. Education Reform Act. That could be one, but it's not one we'll put in there. Competition is one of them. Yes. So we've got competition and tackling a form of inequality in there. Competition, formula funding, league table, standardized tests, all marketization policies. Yep. There's 2 aspects of marketization that we kind of look at. Reading champions, national literacy strategy, helping boys in education. Okay, we've got the categories here, really.
Okay. So what's
choice? There it is. Olivia's just come up with our last one. Our first one is looking at ways in which educational policy has promoted competition.
Okay, so what could be our 4 for that?
Which 4 policies have promoted competition? And there's quite a few in there.
Oh.
Oh,
Sorry.
you've gone ahead.
Yeah,
First,
did
Duncan.
that.
Yes,
Yeah, that was like by accident, but I think
lots-
someone did more or less get it. Actually, I think
They did.
Evie.
They talked about formula funding, open enrollment, standardised tests, league tables, which all came from the Education Reform Act, and they all promoted competition. Our next one is promoting choice. Which of the remaining 12 policies there have promoted choice? And by choice, we mean choice of providers, basically. There may be a couple of terms in there you may not be aware of. Certainly when I've done this. University technical colleges is one. University technical colleges are, lots of people saying free schools, academies, faith schools, and technical colleges. We have got them there. I'll explain what a UTC is. University technical colleges are like post 16, post 14, actually, I think they are. They are basically technical colleges that were set up for vocational education, and they were linked into universities. So it's another form of provision that somebody may have. Lots of people have identified the expansion of faith schools under New Labour as well. Free schools, the introduction of free schools under the coalition government in 2010, and the expansion of academies, which was done under the same act. In 2010, they are ways in which to promote choice. Our next one
What do we
is
think? Oh yeah, sorry.
inequality. We've already identified it.
Yeah.
Which ones of those tackle, let's say, economic inequality? Is there going to be a theory and methods revision session like this one? Yes, next week.
Yep, same time next week. Cara's asking how long is this?
Roughly 45 minutes.
Yeah,
roughly.
So we've got like one more activity after this one, but it's a potentially long one, and also we'll answer some questions. But yeah, hopefully done by.
Okay, so we've got EMA, we've got pupil premium, we've got lockdown laptops. There is another one in there. We've got 3 of the 4 for tackling economic inequality.
I suppose it might be the one that you might not have thought of, or might have put in a different category potentially.
How come Katie isn't here in this revision session? She will be back next week.
She will.
She will be back next week. We miss her. We will pass on your best wishes there. City centre academies. There you go. Just seen that one come through. Yes, that is the other one. Education maintenance allowance, lockdown laptops, city centre academies all tackled economic inequality. And our final one.
What links them?
What links them?
We have had it earlier, haven't we? But
we did. But let's see if we can get that link again.
Yes, Katie will be at the theory of methods one, Habs. Yeah.
City centre academies. City centre academies were the first wave of academies that were created. What they did is they merged failing schools in inner city areas and created brand new schools and allowed them to be run by private businesses, which was a way of something making them more efficient and having higher standards and putting more money into education.
And Stella's right; it was introduced by the Labour Party. Yeah,
it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, and our last one.
Oh yeah, Evie's got the link.
Where? Reducing gender inequality. That is right. Sorry, Abby's. I've just seen it from Abby. I didn't see it from Evie.
Sorry.
Just above. Yeah. Oh, it's got it. Yeah, tackling gender inequality. Is there somewhere to get all the 30 marker plans?
Sure
I don't know what that means.
Not quite sure what you mean.
I don't know. But okay, so there we have. Will there be anything regarding criminology WJC?
No,
I don't know. I don't.
Not
think
from
so.
us. No. I don't know. There might be some.
I'm doing some work on WJC criminology videos at the moment, which will be coming out shortly. But I don't think we're doing live streams like this.
There was a question: do you have to know all of these? Obviously, no. The more you do know, the more you could bring into an answer about policies, whether that be a 30 marker on education policies or perhaps a shorter answer asking about policies. But you are probably it would be better to know a lot about a few of them, wouldn't it? Really, so you could develop your point and evaluate it a bit more. You don't want just to list a load of policies, but it's good to know of some that do more than one thing, because you might be asked about policies that reduce inequality, for example, reduce gender inequality. So you need to know a few that do that. Okay. So this activity, and I think it's a new one for us.
It is a new one.
Yeah, the bubble pop. And it's a very, very, very open question. It's list as many sociologists from the education topic as you can. And I've already seen hundreds on this, so part of it is revising what you've already done. Let's see what you come up with. What my little word of warning with this one is that you will see people, and there are already some coming through, Sewell, Douglas, Bodger, Archer. You will see some coming from people that you perhaps don't know or you haven't covered, aren't familiar to you. Don't worry about that. Everyone will cover different studies. Different textbooks have different ones in them. Some will be really, really recent or contemporary ones that you haven't necessarily encountered. If you're watching this live or within a day or two of where we are, which is the 10th of May, and some names come up, there's nothing wrong with you going and having a little read and see if you can find out about some of them that you haven't seen before. If it's closer to the exam, I would say I wouldn't do that. Focus on the ones you already know. But
there's hundreds of studies in education. We've just selected a range of them.
Yeah.
We're seeing you put through loads of them there. Mercer, McRobbie, Willis, Bernstein, Gilborn and Udell, Rist, Feinstein, Durkheim, Parsons, Althusser, Archer,
Sugarman.
Willis, Dunn and Glazley, Durkheim, Berriton and Engelman. Touch and go, that study, to be honest with you. But Troyer and Williams, Chubb and Moe. We've got lots of coming through. Sharp, Keddy, Althusser, McRobbie. Certainly a lot of research. So a lot of names are coming through with here. Evie's come through with a lot there. Willis, Douglas. Oh, it's just gone very quickly past me. Durkheim, Parsons, Ball, Rist, Hall. Yeah.
Is that me? Is that me?
I think, I think maybe Stuart Hall.
Might be Stuart,
Swan and Greydall, Gilborn, Orza, Wright, Cecile Wright, Norman, Murray, Evans, Mackengale, Palmer. They're just coming through. Sullivan, Becker, Rist, Wright, Basil Bernstein. Somebody likes Basil Bernstein. Favourite. Okay. Archer, wrong. Rex, Wright, Wallace. There are so many. And when you actually think about it, if you look over the 6 or 7 different kind of textbooks and course companions that there are for sociology of education, with it being a core topic, there are lots of different researchers in there. So if you do see anything here that you're looking at, don't worry. Don't worry overly about sort of like a name. Lacey, that's a good one there. Francis. Who did the universalistic values one? I'm assuming you mean Parsons. The idea of transmitting particularistic to universal values.
Douglas, Bartlett. Bartlett
there. Usher, Althusser. Wow, so many.
Doing really well. So they're going to start. Some are going to start appearing on the screen. So give yourself a little round of applause or cheer if you came up with these ones as they came up. But you've come up with so many more. The ones that are coming up are all on the AQA kind of teaching guide, which they have on the website, which sort of perhaps guides your teachers a little bit as to which ones to include. But as we've already said, many will include different ones, other ones, and that's absolutely fine. So let's
Steve Strand, that's a nice one. Steve Strand's a nice contemporary one, 2015, 2016, professor of sociology at Oxford.
In stark contrast, we've got Tolcott Parsons there, and Louis Althusser, but we got these ones, brilliant. Bowles and Gintis, saw lots of those there. Chubb and Moe, I'm sure I saw a few people get Chubb and Moe, bit of marketisation stuff there. Davis and Moore, lots of you got that.
I'm going to pick up on that comment by Lilo in a minute. Okay. Just that one. Barely mentioned any sociologists getting a star. Okay.
Louise Archer, Pierre Bourdieu, Diane Ray, Will Bartlett. Someone did get that one. Well done. Calvin Bhopal. So there are a few in here which you might not necessarily have come across, but they.
Calvin Bhopal will be ethnicity and education.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Ball, lots of people did get that. Is there someone's asking there, is it better to use contemporary studies or more traditional ones? It does depend what you're answering and what you're talking about. There are some classic ones. You're likely, if you're doing about functionalism and education, you're going to mention Parsons, Davis and Moore, etc. If you're doing Marxism, you're going to mention Althusser and Belz and Gintis. But it's good to show a contemporary knowledge, so you do want to bring a few in if you can. Do you need to have their first name? No, you don't.
I'll come back to that about sociologists' names and stuff in a minute. It's something we mentioned when we were on the tour.
Someone said, I thought we're capped at Marx if we don't mention the sociology. Anyway, you're going to come back on that as well.
I'm going to come back to that, but that's not right.
Yeah, got Mac and Gale. We've got Becky Francis. It might well be that your teachers encourage you to use them, and that's a good thing. You know, so we're not going against what your teachers have said. You know, you want to demonstrate as much knowledge as possible. But okay, Tony Sewell, Gilborn and Udall, and Heidi Mirza. Lots of those have come up today, either in this activity or across the other ones. So very well done to lots of you. And you came up with so many extra ones on top of that. So very, very impressive. Craig wants to say something about names.
Names. And sort of like we mentioned this when we were on the Great Booster Tour. So like one of the things that it's more important to know the sociological concepts that are being discussed than the specific names. When you're doing an exam, it's not like you would be doing a dissertation where you have to correctly reference things. When you're doing an exam, what you're far better to know the concept than the person who's done it, and certainly their first name or the year that it comes from. Going into Duncan's kind of what Duncan was saying about older and newer and contemporary things, some of the older studies can be pulled apart and criticized quite easily, and they are kind of there for evaluation. Of course, you would like it to be more contemporary. Some of them are very, very outdated. But if you've only got studies that are from a little while back, think critically about them and criticize them. You know, think critically, particularly those studies that came from the 1960s and 1970s that had a very, very different view of society than we do today. You can quite easily criticize those and pull them apart. There was somebody else talking about the number of synoptic links. Synoptic links come about almost naturally, if you like. I'd say. You can't really force a synoptic link in where there's not one. But say, for example, you were doing an essay on social class and education, and you started talking about subcultures, and then you made that link into sort of like how some people may be more likely to commit crime because of subcultural formation. It's probably better working in the other way, isn't it, really? Sort of like crime and educational failure, sort of like to crime. But if you make that type of synoptic link, that is better. There's no real... Go on.
I was just going to say, a couple of questions have come up, which I thought I could just put on the screen and we could just deal with them briefly, because we've probably got a few minutes just to go over them. So, and I think some of them probably link to that. So I'll do the one that links to that most first of all. So if I put the wrong person for a wrong study, I could still get marked if I answered the question correctly.
Yes.
You get, it's positively marked. So what is correct in there will be marked, and the knowledge of the study and the knowledge of the concept is much more important than the knowledge of the name. So if you're thinking, I'm not 100% sure who said that, but I do know it, don't ever think, I won't mention it then because I can't remember the name. Do it. Yeah. And either take a punt at the name if you think you're right, go for it, or just don't put a name, just say that this concept exists or this research was done. That's fine.
Of course, knowing the names shows a really sophisticated understanding of sociology, but you also knowing the concepts does as well. And being able to use that kind of sociological literacy to be able to use the language of sociology means that, there is no cap on getting into that top band if you don't know a specific name of a sociologist. Many of the sociologists will have done lots of different pieces of research across the board. So, if I think about somebody like Stephen Ball, he's done research across a number of different areas within education. Think about subcultural formation, setting and streaming, marketization. There's lots of areas that he's done. So there's what I would suggest is that if you know the name, that's great. If you don't, do not panic.
No, absolutely. Now, I'm not suggesting we go over the whole of globalization in education now, Craig, because I know that might take us a little bit of time. But it is something that people ask about from time to time. So I suppose it's more like what's the sort of thing that we mean by globalization? What's the sort of stuff that could come up? Maybe as let's imagine, say, we get a 10 marker about 2 ways that globalization's affected education or something like that. What sort of thing are they wanting?
Well, I mean, I think it's the ways in which the process of globalization has impacted on UK educational policy. So it might be things like how schools, how the UK education system, and I say the UK education system, it's largely sort of like England,
The English,
and a little bit of Wales as well, would be adopt different types of schools from elsewhere in the world. So, for example, free schools and academies. Mm-hmm. A nice contemporary one that came up the other day was skills for the global economy. And we've seen that Rishi Sunak is putting forward this idea everyone should stay on and do maths until they're 18. That is a perfect example of trying to improve the PISA rankings. And so the impact of globalization is that we've fallen behind other nations in terms of maths. So they put in a policy to try and address that. The same can be said for making things like compulsory resits of maths and English if you don't get them the first time. That can be influenced by the PISA rankings. There's lots of different kind of little policies like this. There's some negative policies. So sort of like obviously the global insecurity that was caused by the war on terror leads to things like the prevent policy, reporting radicalization. The reinforcement of British values, because we've got greater migration coming into the UK, and so we set out a set of British values, which will mean that sort of like we'd have greater acceptance of different faiths, and things like that.
And might link into kind of that sort of Durkheim type sort of value consensus and social solidarity type idea. Yeah. And then I suppose there's sort of more. If you can, that's the main way you'd talk about those direct ways it might have impacted policies. There might be indirect ways as well, ways in which globalization's changed our society. I suppose we've already had a couple of those in terms of things like the prevent duty, changed our economy as well. So then, things, you could, as long as you can make the link and make the steps, things like that kind of crisis of masculinity and the decline in manufacturing jobs and stuff could be linked to the impact of globalization, and therefore policies such as trying to deal with male boys' underachievement, etc., could be linked to that as well. So you can make those steps. I've also got one here that probably, while we're just talking about policies, do you need to evaluate policies like with?
I did see that one. That was the one I was just thinking about highlighting.
Depends on the question.
It does depend on the question. If it's a 4 or 6 marker, no, you don't need to. If it was an essay, or if it was an essay on like 30-mark essay on policy, like we had last year, what you would need to think about is how effective was that policy, and make a judgment on how effective the policy was. What was the impact of that policy? Who did it impact on? Who might criticize the implication of that policy? So, for example, last year there was lots of questions on marketization policies, and there was lots of evaluations you could have put in for there. So things like the myth of parentocracy as an evaluation, criticizing the idea that parentocracy was only really for the middle class, not for everyone. The ways in which schools was started to teach the test because of things like league tables. These will all be evaluations. If you've got it on a 30 marker, that's what you do. How effective was the policy?
So if you think about those ones we had on the connection wall a bit ago, these are policies designed to reduce inequality, economic inequality. These were policies designed to reduce gender inequality. Well, did they? Were they? How successful were they in doing that? Absolutely. Then
I'm liking that sort of like everybody's recommending how many sort of like paragraphs, 20 and 30s there. I would say most of you are in the right ballpark. It's about the quality of your writing,
absolutely,
rather than the quantity.
Absolutely.
So if you make well developed points that are evaluated and analysed, that shows a depth of response, and then you need an appropriate range of responses, a number of different explanations there.
Okay. Could sociology and science value freedom come up on this paper? Yep, could do. So you could get a 10 marker on the 10 marker at the end of this paper 1 could be about methods, it could be about theory, or it could be a bit about where the two come together, which to a certain extent this sort of value, freedom, sociology and science is kind of where theory and methods come together to a certain extent. So yes, it could do, or it could come up in paper 3. Yeah. So all the theory and methods content could come up on either paper 1 or paper 3 in theory. Yeah.
It, in some ways, you're kind of doing a lot of your revision for paper 1, which also then goes into paper 3 as well.
Yeah. So obviously you don't get we know what the sort of 20 mark is. It'll be the methods in context, so that's definitely methods and it's a particular style of question. So you don't get a 20 mark theory question until paper 3. But yeah, all the content could come up at any point on on those papers. Yeah. And I know this sounds like sorry. I'll add that to the broadcast as well. But it seems like an obvious point. But on the theory and mark questions on paper 1, don't feel you only have to talk about education. You can talk about theory and methods in the entirety. Occasionally, people feel, it's the education paper, so this is still education. Yeah. It's all of it. Same with paper 3. It doesn't have to just be about crime on that theory methods bit, the section.
Definitely. I mean, particularly when you're using examples, it might be, say if it's about a method, you might use an example from where you've done families or beliefs or work, poverty and welfare, or one of those examples there.
Yeah, there was also
lots of people saying any predictions. No. Genuinely, we do not. We are none the wiser.
No. Yeah, they could repeat things they've asked before. They could ask something new. So there's no, we can't predict it. There are quite a lot of questions coming in about, what could this be on it? Could be there. Anything from theory and methods could be in any of the theory and methods questions. So things like, could it be social action theory? Yes, it could. Could it be, could it be postmodernism? Yes, it could. If you run out of time during a 10 or 20 marker, is it always better to move on to the next question or finish before moving on? I think you have to make a judgment. Are you going to get more marks by finishing that question or by getting something down on the next question? And I think that's always quite
there
tricky,
is
a judgment to make.
Some people, I always kind of sort of like suggest to people that maybe leave the 4 and the 6 mark to last, because they are the ones you need to write the least for. And therefore, if you're coming into 10 minutes to go, and you've got a question that still needs to be done, you want it to be a 4 marker, not a 30 marker. And that's one way of doing it. I would suggest try and answer as much as you can. Get your time management right. You're talking a mark and a half a minute. So for a 4 marker, for the 4 and the 6 marker, 10 to 15 minutes maximum. And I would probably say 10 minutes maximum, really. You can make up some time there. The 10 mark question, 15 minutes roughly. 30 marker, 45 minutes. Methods in context, about half an hour. And the other 10 marker, about 15 minutes.
Right. If there's no item for a question, do you need to evaluate? So I'm assuming this is about 10 markers, and this is perhaps more about paper 2 than so the 10 mark without an item in paper 1 is your theory and methods 1. Obviously, you have more in paper 2. In the mark scheme for the outline and explain one, it doesn't mention evaluation. For the apply and analyze, it says analyze or evaluate or evaluate. To be honest, I wouldn't worry too much about the difference between it, but I wouldn't try and shoehorn in an evaluation or whatever to, it's evaluation can form a part of your analysis potentially, but I wouldn't worry about it unduly. Have you seen something?
I'm laughing at some people talking about learning hedonism. You kind of do that on like June the 15th after your exams are finished. Learn about hedonism then.
Yeah.
And apparently Gurkibal is looking buff. Oh.
Well, there you go. It's all good stuff. Right. I think we may leave it there. Do you have... I'll just do this one. Do you have any tips for really extreme anxiety during the exam? I mean, obviously, if you're really extreme, then we're probably not the best people to give tips on that. But trying to keep calm and not get overly anxious about it. I mean, obviously, the more prepared you are, the less worried about it you'll be. So if you feel like you've done enough revision and etc., but probably not overdone it either, giving yourself time to relax, giving yourself breaks, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think just most of the general tips about sort of like managing anxiety. So things like get some fresh air, get some exercise, get plenty of sleep in the run up to the exam.
Drink lots of water,
drink lots of water, get a good meal, and realise that you're going into the first exam. I'm very aware that the students this year have not gone through this process at GCSE. One exam, the first exam that comes up, doesn't make or break your grade as such. So if you have a bad exam, it's not the end of the world. You've got plenty of time to make it up on paper 2 and paper 3. The likelihood is you'll probably do better than you think, right? And so what I would suggest is that sort of like, it's very easy to say to somebody with anxiety, don't feel anxious about it. What I would say is kind of try and manage that. Sort of do all the steps that you would normally do for managing anxiety. It's a very tough time doing exams, particularly if you've never been through them before. But it's short, and sort of come June the 15th, you will feel a lot relieved about it.
I did say that was the last one. Is it true that if you revise on the day of the exam, it's pointless? I wouldn't leave yourself much to do on the exam, but I certainly wouldn't start. A little bit of reminding yourself, or just a little bit of brain training before you go in wouldn't hurt, but I wouldn't be spending too long revising on the day of the exam.
Yeah, if you're writing notes on the day if you're writing out your full set of notes on the day of the exam, that's a little bit of a worry. If you've got one sheet and you're looking at it before you go in, that's perfectly fine. Amount of students who before they go in have got a one sheet and just trying to remind themselves, just kind of cue themselves up, that's fine.
Why not? And then when's the next live, which is a perfect good way to finish. Same time next week, 6:30 next Wednesday, and we'll do the theory and methods aspect of paper 1.
Methods.
Yeah, and probably a little bit more of the sort of question and answer about the about the first exam. Okay. Yeah. Good luck, everyone, and good luck with your revision. Don't only revise for paper 1. Remember, you haven't got very long between the exams when they come up, so do remember to be doing some revision for papers 2 and 3 as well. But I do appreciate mine will start to be focused on paper 1 coming up now. Okay, thanks very much, Craig. Thanks very much for all your amazing answers on the chat window.
Yeah, fantastic answers. Given the answers you're giving today, I'm sure you'll do a lot better than you think you will.
And if you haven't already, if you could do a little thumbs up to say you've enjoyed the video, that will help other people find our next ones and find this video. And similarly, if you subscribe if you haven't already, and then you'll get an alert when we're going live next time. Okay, cheers guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.